So what does it mean to think like an engineer? If we say the answer to that is to think according to the Code of Ethics of engineering, that's of course an entirely circular answer. That is, they're supposed to be based on something. But we can see that as the essay moves on, that the idea of a code of ethics becomes a very important thing. So in this next section, I don't think that we get a direct answer to what it means to think like an engineer. However, we do get a characterization, excuse me, of what a code of ethics is and what it's for. And if you look at that definition, you can see that it is based upon a presumption about what a profession is. And you should hear echoes of Sieghart's professions as the conscience of society in this section. If you look at his definition on page 153, I believe, of a professional code of ethics, it's a convention between professionals. And that convention is a set of rules, an agreement about how they can best serve an ideal. And on the next page, I think it's 154, you'll see when he's making the distinction between what a profession is and what a union is. Clearly, he believes that a union is something where individuals come together for mutual self-protection and in their own interests, whereas a profession is individuals coming together to better serve that ideal. What the ideal is, I think, rather vague in terms of engineering. Maybe we'll have to specify that at a certain point. To create better and useful products, to best serve the humanity in terms of its harnessing of technology, something like that. I'm sure we can all fill that in for ourselves. However, the notion of a convention between professionals, I think, is a very powerful idea. If you presume, if you think it's legitimate, his notion that a profession is ultimately an altruistic enterprise, because it is an organization that is meant to not serve its own interests, but to serve an ideal, a service in general. But if we do stipulate that idea of profession, then you can see how the notion of the convention between professionals actually fits in quite nicely, because a code of ethics is the rules of the game, as he says. And moreover, kind of an explicit rules of the game. So everybody knows what the rules are, what the parameters of acceptable behavior on the part of individual professionals is, and how useful that can be, right? That is, not just doing what I think is right as an individual who happens to be a professional, but having a cognizance of what the general agreement is about what is right. And you can see how useful that is, and how he's thinking of the Robert Lund situation in terms of the Challenger tragedy in this light, is that if the rules are out there, and that we all sort of agree, implicitly at least, have agreed to them by becoming members of the profession, then an individual who's under some pressure to violate any one of those rules can reasonably expect that if he or she stands on principle and says, no, that's just not something that I can do, because it's not something that we do, then you can see the usefulness of that, because the individual professional, in standing on principle or refusing to do a certain thing because it violates the rules of ethical practice of the profession, can reasonably expect other members of the profession to back them up, to say, well, this person cannot be punished, fired, dismissed, because we all would act as he or she would act in that particular situation. I think that is, and maybe we haven't gotten very far yet in this essay in terms of answering the question what it means to think like an engineer, but I think that's a pretty nice explanation of the usefulness of a code of professional ethics.